What's good, YouTube? It's your boy DJ Liftoff with the JP Way, and you don't want to miss this flight. Now, in today's video, we're going to be talking about none other than the Hercules DJControl Inpulse T7. Now, I personally think this DJ controller is going to become one of the most popular DJ controllers on the market. Number one, because of all of its great features, and on top of that, it's for an amazing price. This controller has motorized platters. If you've never seen any of my videos on YouTube before, I do a lot of scratch tutorials. Welcome back. If you do, check out some of my videos. So with this particular controller, if you're looking to get into scratching and you're at the basics, or if you even know a little bit, this controller is going to be perfect for you to really nail down those basics before you jump into a super high-end controller and spend a whole bunch of money before you really figure out if you really want to learn how to scratch. Now, the motorized platters are just one great feature amongst many on this T7. Before we hop into how the platter feels, how the crossfader feels, how the pitch faders feel, let's talk about a few more of my favorite features on this T7. If you've listened to any of my mixes, you know that I love using stems, so mixing different acapellas with different instrumentals. And on this T7, I have two ways to get to my stems essentially. One way is going to be right over all of my pads. I have that stems 3 button that I can press, and I have all of my stems functions there, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. I also have, which I love, the instrumental and the acapella buttons right next to those pads as well. Another feature that I personally really like is the fact that the auto loop is on a pressable dial. This allows me to be a lot more creative. The T7 also has my favorite type of effect system. Those are going to be the paddle effects. It's just the simplest for me to use. I've always liked the paddle effects over any type of other effect system. We also have the Beatmatch guide right in the middle of the controller. It's great for those DJs that like a visual representation of knowing which track they actually need to maybe slow down or speed up. Definitely a game changer as well if that helps you when you are trying to beat match. And lastly, before we hop into how the T7 actually feels and I talk about some of the features that I just mentioned and more, this controller does have balanced outs, so you have your XLR outs as well as the RCAs, so you definitely have both of those, which is great. You have a mic in input in the back, that's going to be your 1/4 inch. You also have a headphone input in the front, that's going to be for 1/4 inch as well as 3.5 millimeters as well. Also, the T7 is compatible with Serato DJ Pro. That's what I'm actually going to be using in this particular review. It's also available for Serato DJ Lite, that's going to be completely free, as well as DJuice, that is going to be Hercules' native software. So you have all three of those options, which is great. All right, DJs, so first, let's talk about these platters. You have two 7-inch platters on both sides. This is going to leave plenty of room for your hand on the platter if you are going to be scratching. Whether you like to use just 2 fingers or all your fingers, I believe you have enough room for both. Also, quick note, shout out to Hercules for the custom platters. I love the white and the black. These definitely look great. Now, you also do get 2 types of slip mats, and this platter comes off really easily. All you have to do is essentially just pull up just like that. I have the thicker slip mat on here right now. So you essentially have a thicker one and you have a thinner one. These are just both going to give you different resistances. This is going to allow your platter to spin a little bit more freely. With the thin one, I actually like the way the thicker one feels when I'm scratching, so I'm going to go ahead and put that back on there. And as far as putting this platter back on, all you have to do is line it up right here and just push down in the middle, and that'll slide right back in and lock in. So again, as far as scratching, this feels really clean, really fluid motion for me. Again, plenty enough room around the outside of the platters. So there's a quick example of me just doing some freestyle scratching. Now that of course is going to lead me into talking about the actual crossfader. Now this crossfader actually feels a lot better than I thought it would. If you're someone who's a beginner DJ, especially someone that hasn't even learned how to scratch, or even if you're in the early stages of learning how to scratch, this is going to be a great pickup for you to start learning how to get your hand motions down first of all. And this crossfader is definitely a good option to start getting the feel down of what scratching feels like with the actual crossfader. Right above the Hercules logo, you're gonna see 3 different settings that you can set this knob essentially to. All the way to the right, that's pretty much gonna disable your crossfader. So if I have this playing, you're gonna see that it makes no difference to the volume. If we push it right to the middle, that's gonna be the setting you're gonna wanna leave it on for scratching. That's gonna mean if I'm all the way to the left and I play something over here, it's not gonna play. And as soon as I go off of the edge of this crossfader here, we're gonna hear the sound in full volume. And then all the way to the left, that's just gonna mean if I'm over here towards the end of the crossfader and I play a sound, it's gonna be really low. And then as I come over to the right, that volume is gonna come up, and it's gonna be the same vice versa on the other side. Now let's go ahead and move on to the volume faders. These feel really fluid. If you're someone who likes to actually scratch and quickly move these up and down, I would say it's not the perfect type of volume fader for that per se. However, I personally like to use my volume faders just for what it is. So if you're someone who likes to just push up on this volume fader, it feels really balanced as far as the resistancy. So sometimes they can be really loose and it's hard to make a very smooth volume fade up, but these are so fluid, have the perfect resistance, like I said, for people who like to just use them as volume faders. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Beatmatch guide. Now this is gonna be perfect for you visual DJs that like to know whether a track or a deck is moving too quickly or too slowly and actually be able to see it. I recommend that you eventually learn how to do it just by using your ears. However, it is a great help to have this Beatmatch guide. So to make sure it's enabled, first we're gonna just go ahead and click it, make sure these 2 red lights are illuminated. And now I like to personally use this in one particular way where I'm always paying attention to the deck that's moving too quickly, and then I like to slow it down by just holding the outside of the platter here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually go ahead and start the right deck before the left deck, and then we'll go ahead and see what happens. So as I can see here, this left illumination or this left light is actually illuminated, telling me, hey, this deck is moving too quickly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold that. I'm also gonna be looking at my waveforms on the actual software. And as you can see there, now you can see they're perfectly aligned. Once they're perfectly aligned, you can see the beat align is actually green. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I personally love the paddle effects. This is used really easily. So here we have our 1, 2, and 3. That's gonna correspond with the effects. These are gonna be software effects in your actual software. I also can change the beat values by just using this plus and minus button here as well. So that's super duper easy. And then another great thing about this particular controller is you can enable multiple effects at once as well. So if I wanted to enable all 3 of these, I can go ahead and do that. Just like that. I also, of course, can just press this back to the middle. And if I just want to do quick hits of effects, I can also just press down as well. Just like such. Now the rest of the mixer section is pretty standard. You have your filter knob here. You have, of course, your low pass and your high pass, depending on which way you turn it. You have your low, your mid, your high, EQs, of course, and then you have your gain at the top. One thing to note, all of these knobs, they really feel good. They feel really good and fluid. They also have your hard stop in the middle, or you're kind of locked to where, you know, once you're perfectly in the middle, you kind of get locked there, which I personally really like. You also have that on your filter knob as well. Over towards the right, we have our master button here. On the left, we have our mic input here. Right below that, we have our headphone section, so our Q mix, and then our full volume, as well as our Q button for the headphones as well. So now let's go ahead and move on to the actual range fader over here. Again, this is really similar to our volume faders. This feels really fluid and durable. Love the way this feels. Also, it has that lock in the middle, just a really, really good added touch for me. We also have the range button right over here. So if we want to change our range from 816 to 50, all we have to do is go ahead and press that. We also have our key lock right under that. So if we go ahead and hold shift and we go ahead and hit that key lock, that'll actually lock the key. I just turned it off, so I'm going to go ahead and relock that back on. At the top right of both decks, we have two big knobs that are easy to get your hand around, also feel really fluid. Of course, these are to just go through your library. And then of course, with the click of one of these just straight down, that'll go ahead and load a track on either one of these decks. Now, last but not least, we have the bottom section of both decks. These are of course going to be the same exact thing on both sides. First, I want to talk about that loop section again. I really, really like how this feels. Of course, like I said earlier, if you go ahead and click that, it'll actually start your loop. As you can see, it just gave me that blue shadow background. And then you can just twist this right and left to change the parameter. So if I go ahead and start that. I actually love using knobs that have the auto loop. I just find them a lot easier to use. Right below that, you have your instrumental and vocal button. This is awesome for stems. This allows you to hop right into your stems really, really easily. So if I go ahead again and play this, I'm tired of. If I go ahead and just press that instrumental button, you can see we go right to the instrumental. I can also go from that instrumental to the vocal. I can also turn that off. So that's another great feature to have on this T7. I'll definitely be using that a lot. Now let's go ahead and move over from our auto loop section and talk about the pads and all of the features there, as well as some of the buttons that are surrounding some of the pads. So we have our shift and we have our sync over here. We also have our Q and our play button. Now the Q and play button, they're both really large buttons, so you should have no problem pressing those whatsoever. I really like when the buttons are a little bit larger. Just makes it easier. You also hear the clicks in them, so you always know what you're pressing. On top of that, you also have your pads, of course. These buttons feel really great as well, and you can hear these all click in, so you know when you're pressing them too. So first, we have our hot cue. As far as our pad section, we have our hot cue here. We have 8 different hot cues that we can set. To turn those hot cues off, all we have to do is press or hold shift and then press those different pads as well. Next, we have our loop 2 button. This is going to let you set different beat values based on whichever particular pad that you press. So this one is going to be the shortest, a little bit longer, half beat, 1 beat, 2 beats, and then so on. This will be 4 beats and then so on, like I said. And then if you want to just turn that off, all you have to do is press that again. Now we have our stems button. If you've used stems before, it's the same stems buttons or same stems features as Serato always has. So this is going to be your vocal to enable it or disable it. This is going to be melody. This is going to be bass, and this is going to be instrumental. And then last, sample 4, you have all of your samples right there. Lift off. So now if we go to that second layer of our pad section, if we go ahead and hold shift, we can go to mode 5 here. This is actually going to let us do a different pitch for the actual track. So if we go ahead and play it. Just like such. So now if we hold shift again, we can go to mode 6. This is actually going to be your roll section. Just like that. Now if we hold shift and we go to mode 7, this is going to allow you to set loops. And then if I want to get out of that loop, all I have to do is press number 3 here. And then also you can press 4 here. Also, if you want to just turn that loop on, turn that loop off. And then if you hold shift and we hold or go to mode 8, this is actually going to be your scratch bank. All right, DJ, so that wraps up our pad section, and it also wraps up this T7 review. If you're someone who wants to learn how to scratch or has been learning how to scratch, the T7 is going to be a great pickup for you. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, please press that like button, please hit that subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell so you know the next time that I upload a video. And with that said, I will catch y'all on the next flight.
I don't got no time, but I'ma make time. In a rush, but this time I'ma take time. Budget all your time while I waste time. Borrow all my time so it ain't mine.